Welcome to episode 39 of Venti Questions, the show with friends, coffee, and conversation. My name is Michael.
And I'm Chris. And today we're talking about video game violence. Have video games gone too far? Are graphics too realistic? And those actions that you're performing while doing violent things in video games, is it just too hyper-realism?
Some may say that kids are getting more desensitized by seeing crazy things. Others say that maybe that's just human evolution. Yeah. So make sure you listen to the end to get our opinions on the situation.
Michael, what's new with you?
Well, I have a bit of an update.
An update?
Oh my gosh. So, the last we had talked about Game HoleCon in October was that Jonathan and I were thinking about doing it, and maybe one of our friends was going to like meet us up there type thing, right?
Yeah.
We now are like locked in.
Booked flights, did all that?
We got flights. Okay, hold on, phrase it. Flights for me and him, yes. Our friend James, we're not sure we're not sure how he's getting there yet. Because he lives in like Tennessee or something like that, and so it's only like a small drive, but he doesn't really necessarily want to drive his car, so he's thinking about just flying straight into Madison.
Okay.
He hasn't gotten his tickets yet because he's still confirming he can get the days off.
Yeah.
But he has. Wow, obviously we want James to go, and that's awesome. If he doesn't go, Jonathan and I are still already going.
Still booked.
Yeah. We're automatically going no matter what. We know what hotel we want to stay in. We know how much it's going to cost. We're just waiting on his thing before we book that. That'll be the next thing we book.
And when is that again?
That will be we will leave on the 18th of October and come back on the 23rd of October.
Nice.
So we'll leave on a Wednesday and come back on the Monday.
Cool.
So it's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah.
So we'll do all that. And what we're doing is we're flying into Chicago at Midway, not at O'Hare, at Midway. And then I had to learn about I know a lot of stuff about airports now, buddy. Memorize so many of these damn codes. It's ridiculous. But flying into Midway, then we're going to rent a car from there, drive up to Madison, which is about between 2 and 3 hours, it looks like. So I've looked at it during different times of the day, try to figure it out.
Logistics,
It looks like that, but it looks like the fastest route is going to be like a toll road. But I'm like, we're Floridians. We're freaking used to that crap.
Yeah.
Not really worried about it. We'll just make sure that we have some cash on hand and we'll be good.
Right. If they still have cash lines.
They should, and worst case scenario, if they don't, because we're renting a car in Illinois. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, wait.
You can just get charged for tolls to the rental.
They should have the little flip thing just like they do down here. Yeah. But anyway, so we'll be covered regardless of it. But yeah, that's not a big deal. But we're going to drive into there. Then more than likely pick up James from the airport. Then go to the hotel, depending on like how much of a time frame difference it is. And then we'll make sure we take him there before we head back to Midway to then fly back on Monday.
Okay.
So, but the way the flight is going to work is that our flight is supposed to leave MCO at 1, and we're supposed to get there at like their time, 2:50, like basically like 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Which is technically 3 hours because we'll gain an hour as we're going. And then on the way back, it's similar. It's almost like we're flying the same plane, but like back.
Yeah.
Because it leaves at 3:00, and then we'll get back here at like 7 or something like that. Because now we're losing an hour, So,
well, it's cool that you're doing that and jumping back into the cons.
Yeah, when I was at MegaCon, I talked to a couple of the DMs. So when we had Jonathan on, it was the day before we were going to the second day of the con, and that experience was another one of those ones where he got just the best freaking experience. Look, I know that I may have came across like I wanted him to have a bad time, and it wasn't like that. It's just that I wanted his first time to be his worst time, so that he had nothing but positive to grow from.
What if he just doesn't decide to do it again because of that? Then
that's not how it works when you're in these kind of games. If you end up,
but that's the first time he's done one in person.
Right, but it's like his 15th or 20th games.
No, I understand that. So maybe if it's bad in person, then he'd have the impression like, I'm not going to pay this money to go fly to this place to go do this thing anymore. Right?
No, that's not how it works. Yeah. The problem is that when he eventually does get a bad table now, it's going to like hit more. If you start off with really good and then you start getting bad, even if it's only a couple, the bad seems so much worse than if you start off with mediocre and then all of a sudden you get a couple of good and you're like, oh, it's really okay, cool. But anyway, what I was getting at is the DM we had that night, I've had before, and he recognized me and he was like, what the fuck are you doing here? I'm like, hey, what's up, bro? And so I asked him afterwards, I'm like, hey, have you been back to Gamehole Con since COVID? Because the last time that we went was 2019. And he hadn't either. He said he wasn't sure, but he was thinking he was going to go back this year. So I think this is the first year that the majority of people are really considering going back. They have been doing like a half virtual type thing ever since then.
Okay.
But this seems to be like the first like, comeback tour aspect of it.
Nice.
So I'm really hoping it's going to be fun. As far as like large in a sense, I would say there's probably only like maybe 10,000 people that go. And I'm being extreme. I could be like, it might be like 4,000. You know what I mean? Like it's not a huge con. It's just that there's no excess. Everybody is there for D&D because that's pretty much the only thing that they do. Versus a huge con that then has like 1% that does tabletop. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just very focused. But yeah, no, it's looking like everything's going to work out pretty well. We still have plenty of time to lock down things we haven't locked down yet. We just wanted to make sure we got like the tickets and for the flight and everything.
Get it all set. Yep.
Yeah. So because we can't even buy tickets for the con until I think it's June 3rd or something like that is when they go on sale. And then we won't be able to actually register for the tables until July 15th, I think it is. 'Cause that's when the first day it does.
Okay.
But is way better than like a MegaCon where it's like 2 weeks before the con. This one's like 2.5 months.
Okay.
So,
yeah.
Actually tomorrow, either today or tomorrow is the first day that they're allowing people to start submitting games to be played.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So, yeah, it's just like the way of the, how they have their stuff. But their stuff is ran very, very like,
yeah.
Another cool thing is like, they have already a huge list of people that are signed on to be there. A lot of the creators and stuff like that for D&D in general and all that kind of stuff. So like the coolest one that I got to like see last time I went was Larry Gygax, which is the son of the creator of D&D.
Oh, cool.
Gary. Or Luke Gygax. Sorry. Wrong name. The coolest thing about that is not that it's like, oh, wow, your dad made this. Oh, cool, thanks, bud. But it's more of like the fact that his first character is named Melf. and there's Melf's acid arrows, which is a spell in the game. And so like all like his dad, him, and like 4 or 5 other people, like the first like original like people that played the game, their characters are like immortalized because there's things named after them in the game.
That's
and
cool.
that's what I think is cool about it. I'm like, oh, that's so awesome. But you know, yeah.
That is pretty cool.
And then there's like Christopher Perkins is going to be there, and Mike Merles and a couple other guys that are like really big in the last like 20, 30 years of just creating like from second, third, fourth, and now fifth edition. So like, you know, just cool little things like that. There's the possibility, depending on how like you pick and choose, where you can actually play the tables with them a couple of times. So
cool.
You know, it's fun. I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited to go this time with somebody.
Right.
Because last time I went, I knew a couple of the people that were going to be there, but there's a whole like travel, like con traveling community here in Central Florida of like D&D players. And I know who they are, and like they know who I am, but I'm not part of their little group. And
Sure.
some of them are cool, and some of them I'm just like, oh. So I very much did not hang out with them when I was up there. So this would be kind of cool to have a John Boy 100%, and like we're like 95% that James is going to go, and that's going to be cool. I've never met James in person.
Oh wow.
I've known him now for like 5 years, something like that. So it'd be cool.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a cool way. What happened with that? It was actually Jonathan, his other friend Mike, and his friend Jake. They were playing Borderlands, which is a 4-player game online, and a random guy joined with them, James, and they played and they got along and they started playing together, and that was like 10, 15 years ago.
Wow.
That's how they met him. Yeah.
That's cool though.
Yeah, and he's come down like 2 or 3 times, and like visited and stuff like that. So
that's pretty cool.
yeah, no, James is a really cool dude. I know what he looks like. We've played some video games on. We've played some like D&D games where we had like our face cams on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've never met him in person, so that'd be really. I'm really, really hoping he gets to go, because that would be a really fun dynamic for the 3 of us. So
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, that story is just interesting.
yeah. And I like those kind of like, you know, technology based
Right.
friendships type things. So
Sure.
it's cool.
Yep.
But yeah, that's all I really got going on. It's new. What about with you?
Nothing too crazy. I rented a movie called The Assassin. It's a foreign movie, Asian foreign film. And it's 2015 film. So I
think I'm thinking of Ninja Assassin.
No,
The whole heart's on the other side.
it's not
thing.
that one. Yeah. It's not that one. This one's different. It's, I mean, the story is pretty cliche. It's an assassin who gets tasked with killing a prominent political figure, but there's some like backstory and like family stuff, you know, in there. And the assassin, she is trained pretty well. I mean, she's good. And I tried to follow it. The pace of it was tough because it tried to be very kind of like artistic and a lot of like dramatic pauses and like.
Is it an Asian film?
Yeah, it's Chinese.
Okay.
And it was a little bit tougher to follow the pace of it. I watch a lot of Chinese martial arts films, and that's the thing. Like I've always done, and I've always liked. I've always preferred. It's funny because with anime, you need it subbed, right?
Right.
That's how I like my live action.
Oh no, absolutely.
Like,
yeah, you don't ever want to watch the dub because
it makes it hokey.
Wrong.
It makes it very, very hokey, and even the funny parts of it where it's supposed to be a little bit kind of hokey.
Yeah,
it becomes a caricature.
Yeah, exactly.
Of the work. So,
I haven't watched that many live action Chinese films
that are subbed.
But besides martial art ones, like the old school ones when we grew up together. But I've seen a lot of Korean
Okay.
Because a lot of
Yes.
they do a lot of anime adaptations in live action in South Korea, and so I've seen a lot of those. And yes, some of them can be very, for lack of a better word, CW to the extreme.
Right. Sure.
Where it's just like, okay,
yeah,
this was supposed to be like 2 pages in the original manga, and it was like 10 seconds in the anime, and now it's been a whole episode. Let's move it along.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this, it was just
Good,
I have to watch it again, and I will, because I got a 7-day rental instead of just a 48-hour thing.
Okay.
Because I had a feeling that I was going to be kind of distracted, and the pace of it is a little bit slower, so you have to really pay attention to the nuances of like what they're trying to say and what the meaning of what just happened in front of you, because of the dialogue. It's just very like you have to kind of fill in the rest.
Double entendre type style thing.
Maybe,
well.
yeah. And it's like you have to kind of fill it in, but like if you don't really pay attention, then you're not going to be able to do that based upon what happened in that scene, and then like the line that was said that gives you some brief backstory. You have to like track it.
Gotcha. One of those, you can't watch it later at night. You got to be like awake a little.
You got to be like into it, to watch it in the moment. But the action was okay. There was some action in it, and it was okay. It was pretty good. There were moments that were like, oh, that was cool. You could tell the budget wasn't very high. It wasn't a very high budget film. Because of some of the camera cuts. Some of the choreography was pretty good, but it was very close. So you could tell some of them weren't actual martial artists. They were just, they're like theater, like performers, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we're seeing now, where they do a lot of those close cuts, because it's you can fake it better, right? The choreography, you can't see the full body movement and that kind of thing. So, but it was good. It was good for what it was, and it didn't distract me. It wasn't like, yeah, there's no way. Like some of the stuff was okay. So it's worth the watch, I would say. Just the thing is, it hyped itself up because it did all the it won all of these Asian Foreign Film Award and that kind of, so it's got all the little credits. I think it won 34 or 38 wins, and it was nominated X amount of times.
Right.
So it's for all these different things. So it's okay, the best visuals and this and all these people.
And even if you don't know what, it could have been there was only one movie entered, but when you see that many accreditations, you're just expecting a certain level at that point.
I was expecting the visuals of a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, but it didn't quite hit that mark. There were some cool visuals, but it wasn't kind of like that, or visuals in Hero, or visuals in because Hero was one of the it debuted and stayed on top for a little while for his foreign films. It was actually one of the top debut foreign films.
Also, House of Flying Daggers was another one that
one did really well. And that
the visuals in those 3 movies are very similar, obviously different, but similar motifs.
Yeah. I believe it's the same director. So
wouldn't be surprised. Well, I thought Tarantino did one of those.
He presented it.
Oh,
he did not. By the way, he did nothing. He didn't change that movie at all. I heavily researched it because
that movie was different when it was originally released in China.
He did not change. He did not do any alterations to that movie. It wasn't him. He presented it, meaning he just owned he owned a studio that did that. Basically said, hey, these are good movies. We should play them here because they're good. Right. And so that studio pushed it out to be released in the States. So it was dialogue that was changed. So it was certain things that were said that changed how the story played out, not scenes. Scenes weren't edited or altered, apparently. I looked into it. I was because I thought that too when you were saying it.
And
how it was subbed.
Antonio have seen it. When we first saw it, we saw it as a bootleg before it was a year or so before it came here. Right. And we saw it in chronological order. And then when it came out here, it was changed into a different order.
I don't want to say that you're wrong, but the way that movie was written was supposed to be in pieces like that. I think it was, and I don't know. We can look into it later.
No, it was yeah. There was definitely still like each chapter was different,
right?
Where it was like a little bit of the story of it, but it was in chronological instead of the other way around.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious because I was trying to find it. I wanted to find that version of it to watch it.
Right.
And what everyone was saying, like Reddit and everything, was like, it's different because it was subbed differently. So like the story played out, like meanings were different and things were like, oh, like that's not really what that word is or what that thing means or what they were trying to say there. Like that part, there were some differences that way.
I remember when we were younger and we watched Fearless the first time subbed.
Oh, yes.
We learned all like the subtext. We were like,
oh, like that means something. Oh, this matters.
Like this whole section that we thought was kind of boring and slow actually meant a lot because they were giving us crap like sentences before in English. Okay, this makes a lot more sense. Yeah.
Right. So what led me to watch this movie, because I was just on a kick, because I watched Hero, House of Flying Daggers, Fearless. Like I watched all of the ones that I enjoy. Crouching Tiger, all the ones that I enjoyed that were like the high budget ones that were
right.
Cool visuals and cool stuff like that. So, because I was in the mood for those types, so I like binged all those, and then I'm like, oh, is there anything else? So, so I saw this, I'm like, oh, I'll give this one a try. This seems something, and it didn't really like match that level, in all honesty. But it was as I said, it was worth the watch. So
it's cool. Yeah, I think every once in a while it's fun to kind of like watch those movies that we watched 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, and just relook at it. Like I remember when we went back and relooked at like Black Mask, and we were just like, wow, this thing fucking sucks,
right?
Because I loved that movie. That was my favorite movie for the longest time. But then you go back to other movies and you're like, yeah, it might be more cheesy now than it was then, but it's still good.
So out of the ones that I've watched, Fearless, of course, is the same as I remember, and it was good, and I really enjoyed it because those themes just hit, and it's just, Jet Li movie.
But he was just such a good actor in those movies.
Yeah. Watching Hero, I actually have a better appreciation for it now than I did when I first watched it originally when it came out. Watching it again because I'm used to now that everyone in movies, they do the whole like jumping around type thing.
Right.
That storytelling is now something that is very normal.
It's a genre
people are into. So it wasn't distracting like it was before. If anything, actually, I do feel like it told the story the way it needed to be told because you have to follow like, oh wait, what color is this? So this color means this color means that, because each chapter is done in a different color for a reason.
Yeah.
And it adds depth to it, which I remembered before, of course, but I had a better appreciation for it this time around, honestly.
That's cool.
So there's that.
Well, speaking of fighting movies and the violent nature that they are, I do have a couple of little questions for you.
Let's do it.
On our subject matter today.
Let's do it.
So once again, short answer until we get to one where we're like, okay, let's just get into it. Do you believe that violent video games cause real world violence?
I'm going to say yes.
Okay. We'll get back to that one a little
short.
Later.
You said short answer. So
I'm with you on that. If I had to do a yes or no answer, I would say yes as well. Huge motherfucking asterisk to that. But yes,
we'll argue about that one later.
Exactly, we will.
Yeah.
What is your opinion on the use of violent video games as a form of stress relief?
I think it's a poor stress relief tactic, I guess you can say, or therapy.
Okay. I think it's an extremely healthy.
I think it depends on. Okay, I'm sorry. I think it depends on the type of violence.
Could you give me a quick example of what you mean by that?
I think if you're putting on a boxing game and like it's a
Street Fighter,
it's a game or something like that, or like a Street Fighter, I think that's cool because that's like a competition like fighting game thing where that's healthy. But if you go like, I'm gonna put on Grand Theft Auto and just pop some hookers in the head, you know, with a machine gun or something, or a shotgun. I don't think that's healthy.
Right.
I don't think that establishes good behavior when you're like, oh man, this girl's really giving me a hard time. I think I'm just gonna go to Grand Theft Auto and just shoot some women. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree with that, but I would say the counter argument to that would be, I do think it's perfectly healthy and normal to go into Grand Theft Auto and shoot a couple of random civilians to get the cops to chase you, so that then you can try to escape, because that's part of the game mechanic.
That is part of the game mechanic,
right?
But not if you're like taking whatever's going on in your day as stress.
And that's why I'm saying that the counter argument is, I'm killing people to get a reaction that then is fun. You're killing people because you want to kill somebody. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like your goal is to kill the hooker. Where I'm saying that I agree that that's not good.
It's not my goal.
Shut up. You know what I mean. Your example's goal is to kill the hooker. My example's goal is to kill whomever to get star rating to be able to then try to escape
the chase.
Yeah, the chase. Right. The chase is always the most fun part.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, or you can be a complete and total loser and just type in the freaking cheat codes to get your star rating up. I mean, that's just takes longer.
If the reason to jump on the game is to just distract yourself from what's going on in your life, and there's not a connection between, I wish I can do this in real life, so I'm gonna go sim it. You know, that I think is unhealthy.
That's a mental health issue, and I think that's a separate.
And we'll
issue.
get into that.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
Should the government have a say in the regulation of violent video games?
No.
100% agree. They should not have. They have too much say, in my opinion, as it is.
I think parents should have the say when it comes to that with children, and that's it.
Have you ever played a video game that you thought was too violent or graphic, however you want to look at it?
I thought was too violent or graphic. I would say no. There are games that just push the limit. Yes. In terms of just this hyper realism.
I will say this. There is one game that had one particular scene that did you kind of felt a little weird at first.
Okay.
It was one of the Call of Duties, and it's the scene where you're in the airport and you're playing as one of the bad guys.
Yeah.
And the mission is you walk in and you're supposed to mow down and kill all these civilians that are running.
I played this. So
yeah. We both played it. Yeah. And like, it was a really.
And you commented on it there. I remember. I think you were there when I was playing it.
Yeah. And I'm like, what the?
You made a comment.
Yeah. Because it's both. What the hell? This is messed up, and then also cool at the same time. Not because you're killing people, but because it was such a departure from the typical Paragon style. And then on top of that, you're supposed to actually be like an undercover person, and so it's like, what the hell? Like, okay, we're allowed to kill people for fun for undercover? Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
And then you end up getting betrayed and like the whole spiel. But that, I would think, is probably the closest video game I've ever played to having it be too far,
too much.
Violent. The only way I'll say graphic, and this is a personal thing because I'm a wimp.
It's like Resident Evil or something like that. Yeah.
Like Resident Evil isn't too bad. Some of the ones that are a little further are like Dead Space.
Yeah.
Anything that's like
the one
more.
What's the series that just came out? The Netflix show that they had a movie. I'm trying to, because I played the movie. Oh, The Last of Us.
Oh,
there was some, like, that was like pretty.
Didn't play that.
Pretty wicked, like the way that started off, and like
wicked. I like that.
Yeah, it was just like the way it started off, and the way it was like, wow, you felt like you were in it, you know?
Yeah,
they did a really good job in that game. It was a little creepy too.
I never played that game. I still haven't watched the show, and like I should watch the show, but it's not my style, dude.
Yeah.
I just don't. But I would say I've had more of an issue with more of like a grotesque versus a violent.
Sure.
All right. Do you think the media unfairly portrays video games as a negative influence on society?
Yeah, they've done that for a while.
Okay, cool. Thank God you said yes on that. I was about to say, if you freaking try to say like, no, I think it's fair. I would have been frustrated.
Well,
too.
here's why I don't think it's fair. If they were to do it now, which you don't hear that much about anymore, then I would think, all right, like, there might be an argument for it. But they did it back then,
right,
when the graphics weren't what they were, the type of like story, like it just wasn't that same level. Now it's like, oh, they'd have more of a point. An argument, because you could put on VR and be like, oh, you know,
dude, like, and it's getting more and more and more every day. Dude.
Yeah,
I'm gonna sound like a crazy person. I'm like, I can't wait for it to continue to get that way. Not because I want like to feel the knife go into the flesh, but just because I like the full immersion aspect of it. You know?
Yeah, it'd be cool to have like you're playing a Star Wars game and you have a lightsaber and then you feel the heat from the lightsaber, like,
or if you just feel the resistance of nothing else. That'd be awesome. Yeah,
and then like,
oh, the vibe, that'd be cool.
Right, the vibe. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, there was just a couple I was trying to decide between. Do you feel that there's a difference between violence depicted in video games versus violence depicted in other forms of media?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Because
slightly elaborate, sorry.
Yeah. You're the one causing the action,
okay,
as opposed to being a bystander of the action. So it's like you can see something happen that's tragic and trauma, or you could be the one. That's almost like if you watch a car accident occur, oh my gosh, that's terrible, someone just got hit by a car, still trauma. But if you're the one driving the car and you hit the little girl,
right,
there's a different effect, I think.
I agree, but also you have to realize that there are some games where you watch your little sister is the little girl,
right,
and you watch her get hit by the car,
right,
and then you're just trying to run to help.
Yeah, you know.
So you're not always the person enacting the violence,
right? But you're still
part of it.
You're still part of it, and you're still acting in it and making decisions in that world.
Right.
And if you don't make the right one, you don't do the thing to save the person,
there can be a consequence of that. Yeah, no, I agree with you on that. And I just want to make sure I want to get the other option out there as well.
Yeah.
Not every game is you're the antagonist.
Devil's advocate on that. Can that help people process how, like, there's emotionally how to do that? Yeah. That's what Sims are.
There's a couple of really cool games that have been put out that have actually helped with different people's grief. Not only the people playing it, but sometimes the people just making it.
Yeah.
So, but those ones are really controversial. I don't even want to get into that shit. I got one more for you. What do you think about the argument that violent video games can desensitize players to real world violence?
I think it could happen.
I will say
to a point.
Yes, I think it can happen. But so can just watching the news.
I think it kind of goes into what we just talked about in the last one. Is it's the action. Maybe you're mentally preparing to do something. Like, very specifically, I'm gonna use this example, and it's the cliche one, but like school shooting thing. Like if you mentally prepare, like, oh, I'm going to go in this way and do this thing. And like, you know, I'm like, this is the gun I'm going to use. And like you're kind of like the checklist is going on. Like, and then you're like, you work up the nerve to then do it in real life. Now, when you translate it to real life, it's going to be completely different, mind you.
Absolutely.
And it's probably not going to go the same way you thought it was going to go in the video game. And who knows what happens at that stage of things, but they still pull the trigger that first time. Then who knows if that's something they continue to do or not, right? Like,
right.
But it gets to that point where they pull the trigger, I think, right?
I think my real world example would be, I've seen hundreds and thousands of dead bodies in video games.
Sure.
And I've dealt with like 2 or 3 in real life.
Right.
The 2 or 3 in real life are a lot more affecting,
right,
than the hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Yes.
I play a lot of FPS that I've played in the game.
I agree.
And, you know, that's
because you're taking into account the other senses as well.
Absolutely. And we're not there yet with video games. 10 years from now, who knows?
Right.
You know, we might finally get sense vision.
It's my argument to the 8-bit character
okay.
to the more hyper real looking, like, really good graphics, because it's like you're closer now than you were then.
That. Yeah, Link is one thing versus Link of the nowadays.
Sure.
I get that aspect. I really do.
Right.
All right. Take the gloves off here.
Let's do it.
Personally, I do not think that a video game is going to make a person that is a completely and totally wholesome, just best Mormon kid ever, all of a sudden pick up a machete and go cut his second mother's head off.
I don't think so either.
I also don't think that a kid that was going to do that anyway is going to find an escape in a video game of violence that will cinch that desire. I don't think it's helpful or harmful.
So yeah, that's where
for somebody that is going off the deep end.
I think that, like any other thing in life, any skill you want to acquire, when you practice it and when you go through those mental exercises and pantomime something and get yourself ready for it, it does create a bridge in that neural pathway. Like, you're closer to feeling like actually doing that thing, doing that action and taking it into the real world. That's a personal opinion. I don't know if there's science behind that.
I don't know either, in fairness.
But I could tell you this. How I learned to drive a stick shift manual transmission was through YouTube. It's just by mentally getting
how to swim.
Right, YouTube. Exactly. Just by going through the motions mentally, getting myself practicing it that way, make pretend I can feel, the resistance in the clutch, that kind of thing, like that. So then when I purchased a $300 beater car to then learn, I was living in Georgia at the time.
I know what you're telling me about.
Drove down, picked up the car, and then drove that car manual back up. First time ever driving. The first day I've ever driven a manual. And I was able to do a decent job I got it back through, across the state to another state. So and I attribute that to YouTube and just going through those motions, right? So that's where, okay, if it works for positive stuff like that, why couldn't you translate that and getting mentally ready for those types of things? Because I wasn't really as nervous as I should have been. There was a lot of factors going into that.
Right. I would say that's less of a video game. That's more of just an instructional video. Now, if you told me that you learned how to do it from playing Need for Speed and having an actual thing, then that I would say would be more of a video game situation.
Sure.
But I also still get the same part. I get your thought process.
But what I was doing is, with the video, watching someone shift gears, I had a makeshift thing,
right, but
just to get the tangible, following along, doing my feet with what they were doing with the clutch, and
right. But the way that I would say that the challenge that versus it not being relevant to a video game aspect of it is that that same person, if you were the cameraman for that person doing it, you would have been right there in real life. Versus a video game, you're never going to be in that real life because it's a fictitious thing.
Sure. I think there's something to, going through those motions. Mm-hmm. And if you're doing that in a game, it's not the same. You're not using the same muscle memory to do it unless you're playing a sim, mind you. Then that's what people train on, flight simulators and driving simulators. These are things that people actually train on and learn, and it has some translatable skill, right?
Right.
To real world application.
But those things aren't considered violent.
Correct.
My aspect would be, as somebody who has played, out of the two of us, I'm more of a gamer than you are. I've logged more hours.
Oh, yeah.
The amount of hours I have logged where I am playing a game that I'm holding a gun.
Right.
With the objective to kill someone, something.
Right.
Has never translated into me wanting to even own a gun.
Sure.
I don't like guns.
I understand.
But if you want to play some Halo real quick, I'm down, bro.
So I get that. My rebuttal to that is, and this is going to sound really strange, but I don't think you're mentally ill. And what I'm trying to say there,
I mean, it depends.
I'm not saying you don't have mental issues.
Okay, that makes it a little bit better. I'm like, oh, let's not go crazy.
I'm saying I think you can make that distinction, and you're not like you're at a different cognitive level than someone that maybe is on the verge already. So I'm not saying that video games are going to make someone, as you said, the Mormon become the serial killer. Although there's probably not a line that's too far off from that. But anyway,
that's because I can't have caffeine, bro.
Yeah, give him a cup of coffee and he'll be Dahmer. So
give him a Diet Coke and he'll be like a normal person.
Yeah, right. But I do think that if someone is already maybe dealing with abuse in real life or dealing with situations, I think it could be a stepping stone. I think it's the gateway, not necessarily, but I do think that it doesn't help because it's about the behavior,
right? And so this is where my argument with this, because I agree with what you're saying. I agree with what you're saying, but I think that helps prove the point that video game violence is not the issue.
It's not the issue.
The issue is that this particular human being has some sort of past trauma / chemical imbalance that has caused them to be more predestined to do X thing.
Right.
Regardless if their first taste of violence is through Time Crisis,
right,
or through watching road rage in real life.
Sure.
They are just as likely to snap and go and kill somebody.
Right.
The problem I feel is that people found a quick answer during a time frame of fear of the new.
Sure.
And it was latched upon.
Yeah. Just like rock music is the devil. It's going to brainwash you.
Satanic.
Right. No,
yeah.
I'm in agreement with that. Things. If I wasn't in agreement with that, then I would have said the government should regulate it. Right. And they shouldn't, because that's not, I think, no, that's where I think that, parents, family should regulate that.
Here's my issue.
They should recognize if that person shouldn't be playing that thing.
Right.
Because wait, why is Timmy kicking the cat all the time and swinging it around my tail and killing the dog? And just sit in front of the violent video game. That'll help. Like, no, that's going to make things worse, I think. Right.
Well, so if your reaction to why is Timmy picking up the cat by his tail and swinging it around of why, then that's obviously the problem. Yeah. Just in general, I think we can all agree on that. But I think that the biggest issue is just because, okay, so we have like our rating system, right? So like M for mature is the equivalent of a rated R movie, right?
Yeah.
As far as age allowance.
Sure.
I don't know what the actual
I don't know
qualifications to get to M, but anyway, just because I think that the kid could play it at 11, I think I should have a choice, which I do as a parent. She couldn't buy it herself, but I could go buy it and give it to her. But there's also kids that I think are like 20, 22 that are like, nah, they probably shouldn't play that game. They mentally can't handle it. I know people that wouldn't be able to handle certain games.
Sure.
There's certain games I couldn't handle because I don't like that stuff. It's scary. I think that
it should say PC, parental consent. And if it's a game like that, and then it's like, all right, like if you buy it for your kid and you don't care, fine.
Right. I think that would actually be better in the long run than the M, only because you're a monster if you let your child play a mature game.
Right.
But if it's a parental control game and it's just like, yeah, well, I took parental control and I decided this was okay.
Right.
It's flipping the narrative a little bit, because when you say mature,
everyone has a different level of maturity. And
everybody has a different level of
that
thought process of what maturity is, too.
Right.
And it's going to be completely different. Yeah, exactly. Like, there can be a game that's mature because of what they say in some of the single player, like, dialogue boxes, but they never play single player.
The main character could be a smoker. And,
oh my God.
And so it's labeled that because of that reason.
Yeah.
Oh, drug use or, you know, smoking. It's like, okay.
Well, or, you know, you could be playing Yakuza and you're freaking chopping people's heads off and manically laughing.
Right.
And,
Right.
okay, that's a little bit violent.
Right.
You know, it really just...
Or a racing game, and because the girls are wearing bikinis, it's sexual themes or violence.
Or because it's a
Dead or
street
Alive.
racing game, because of the fact that what you're doing is technically illegal, it has to be rated mature,
Sure.
even though you're just racing a car.
Or
Yeah, the Dead or Alive.
Dead or Alive, when they're
aspect
in
of it.
bikinis, boobs bouncing around while you're...
They
throwing
learned
kicks.
how to do boob physics before they learned how to do hair physics.
They did a good job.
I mean, it does look realistic, but same token, it's just like priorities, bro. But I do think that there is something to be said about desensitizing yourself from situations. Obviously,
The porn argument.
yeah, no, it's a fair argument.
Yeah.
But the biggest problem is that every generation is going to be more desensitized over the stuff that the previous generation dealt with.
Yes.
And it's just because of easier access.
Accessibility, availability to it, yeah.
You know, it's... If somebody flicked off somebody when my mother was in high school, it was like a really big deal.
Right. You can get a citation for that, too.
If somebody flicks somebody off right now, even the person that's getting flicked off is probably going to laugh.
Or do it back, and
most of the time, it's done as a joke.
Right.
And it's something that was so horrible that, like, it would be, like, gossiped about for weeks, has now become, oh, that's just how you say hi.
It's on album covers now. Like, yeah.
So it's part of the evolutional aspect, which I think is also why we don't hear as much about video game violence as we did when we were younger, is because our generation that grew up with it is now getting into positions where it's like, dude, it's not that big a deal. Just play some COD, bro.
And the amount of video games that display that level of violence that people were concerned about then, it's almost every other game. I mean, it's like it's in every game there's violence. So
if you look at a game that's made for children, Pokemon,
Mario,
it's literally capturing wild animals, making them fight each other to the faint death, and then running away from home and beating up other kids and stealing their money.
Yeah.
And then Mario.
Yeah. Kidnapping theme. Princess was kidnapped. There's some bestiality stuff there probably going on.
Let's
I don't
be
know.
real here. She keeps getting kidnapped.
Yeah. Come on, princess.
Someone got Stockholm Syndrome and doesn't know how to tell her ex-boyfriend.
Exactly.
And poor Luigi, just
Right.
a tag along.
Swing man.
I think he's more of a watcher.
Right. Go on. Yeah. That pipe.
In the corner.
Yeah. They're
Well,
plumbers.
he has his own girl now.
I don't know.
Daisy?
Sure. Whatever. Anyway, Mario's jumping on like
Turtles.
birds or whatever they are, right? Birds, turtles,
Mushrooms.
They're mushrooms. The ones with a little beak thing, little brown thing.
The Koopa?
Yeah, is that what they are?
I think they're supposed to be mushrooms.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's crushing stuff. He's killing things.
Yeah. But the other ones are turtles. Yeah.
I know the turtles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he kills the Bowser's children.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up.
Right.
When you really think about it.
Think about those themes. Those are...
Well, also, if you really think about it, the original, like, booklet that came with the original game explained how all of the inhabitants of the Mushroom Kingdom were turned into bricks by Bowser.
So he's breaking
So when
bricks with
he's
his head.
breaking these bricks, he's killing transformed citizens.
Well, they're already dead, but yes.
And then he's robbing them.
Yeah, right. Right. He's stealing. Yeah, he's a grave robber is what he is.
It's horrible when you really look at it. It's
Coin off their corpse.
It's horrible.
Yeah.
But, you know, it is what it is. And here's the thing that I also find that's interesting, right? So you have games that are your stereotypical targets for violence, right? Your Grand Theft Auto is always going to be like number one target, right?
Sure.
Understandable.
And then all the games that do the same thing.
Right.
Saints Row
style.
and all that.
Yeah.
Right.
Then you go into like your regular first person shooter type things.
Sure.
I've always been surprised that fighting games typically, I mean, they're on the list, but they're so far down unless we're talking about Mortal Kombat.
Right. Well,
Fatality.
Sure. You're cutting people's heads off. And some of the fighting games are just, it's competition based. So
have you seen some of the fatalities of recent times?
I have. Yeah. Pretty
insane.
Pretty unique.
Especially when they brought Rambo in.
Yeah. They got Terminator, Rambo. They got some cool stuff. So
they got some cool things with it.
Predator.
Yeah. And I mean, Sub-Zero is still one of the worst.
Yeah.
Just freezing bodies and exploding them and ripping out entire spines. And
it's, Scorpion. Yeah.
Scorpion doing the fire and, splitting people in half.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Fun stuff. Yep. Fun stuff. What do you think is more detrimental? Things of that nature or a first-person shooter?
I think that's more like fantasy-based where you can detach from that. But with first person, you're the person. You're
like Call of Duty, where it's like
you're the
realistic,
right? It's your eyes that are looking to these, as opposed to like looking at like a side screen, side scroll type situation.
Because it's not even in third person, so it is first person.
You're controlling either way. You're controlling an avatar, but when it's first person,
you don't see the avatar.
You don't see the avatar. You see the hands, and then you could be thinking those are your hands, visualize.
No, I'm with you on that.
So, well, as I said, I think it's just like practicing that pattern of violence and like those things. If there's already issues, it doesn't help it. Mm-hmm. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it can cause it, but it definitely can introduce people to themes that maybe they wouldn't have been into before playing it. Right?
I can see that. But I agree with your first statement more than I agree with that one, where it's you're not going to wake up one day after and play Call of Duty once and then be like, I feel like I'm going to go kill people. I don't think that either. Yeah. That's what I was saying. I agree with you that I don't think that's a reality of it.
But let me give you an example of something here, and maybe this will segue into the next thing you were going to say. Mm-hmm. My niece stayed the night here, I don't know, a few weeks ago, and she has an Oculus.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay. She's 12. Friend was here as well, I think. They wanted to download a game, and it was called like Drunken Bar Fight. Okay. Cool game, actually. It looks kind of cool. I YouTubed it before I said yes. I gave her money, she's like, oh, can I have $20 for, and then I'm like, sure. I just gave her $20. Yeah. And then I'm like, for what? And she's like, oh, this game. I'm like, all right. So I looked at it and I'm like, it's pretty bad for you're 12, but it's like a pretty bad game. You're going to a bar.
12 is like sixth grade, right?
I don't know. Sure. Dude, I don't know. She's not my kid. I don't know what grade she's in. I know how old she is. I don't pay attention to that. I don't have to yet. Don't make me grow up, Michael. But anyway, you don't have to go into a bar. You can go into a grocery store. You can go into anywhere, but it's called Drunken Bar Fight. So the YouTube things I saw were you can go into a bar, you can grab a bottle, you could drink it, everything starts getting blurry. Then you can start brawling with people, fighting people, and like mob mentality type stuff where you're fighting other people fighting. You're picking any object up and cracking over people's heads, punching people. The idea is to hurt others and destroy property.
Right.
That's the whole entire thing of it. And it's VR. So you're doing it, I am not her parent.
Right.
I said no.
Which I agree with.
What I really did is I texted her mother.
But yeah, that's what I would have. Yeah.
And then say, hey, this is what she wants to do. I'm cool with it, but it's your decision.
Right.
The answer was no. My niece got upset. start crying the whole thing, like, so we'll really like everyone else, all my friends and this and that, right? Okay, well, that's fine. But I'm not giving you permission for that because your mother said no, and I'm going to support that, She would have said yes, I would have played it because, that'd be kind of cool. But,
I'm a little like blue balled over here now.
I
want to look it up on YouTube now.
Check
it
out.
We're done with this podcast, but whatever.
But yeah, so it's one of those things that like, all right, but I understand, like, yeah, those themes is can get drunk. You can go up to people. The point of it is you're not doing anything nice. It's not like they're coming after you and then you're defending yourself. No, like you're the aggressor.
It's not drunken master.
Right.
Yeah.
You're the aggressor. The whole point is to cause mayhem, right? When you're 12, is that productive? Like, go play something different, And their argument was like, there are other games that I've played that are worse than this and more violent. Like, probably, yeah. But it's not my decision, number one. And number two, why do you need to be in a bar and why do you need to be pretend to get drunk when you're 12 years old?
My argument in this whole situation is you did it right because it's not your kid.
Yeah.
And all of those complaints that she had, I think are valid complaints that should be discussed with the parent.
Sure.
When they're both not emotional.
Well, yes, yeah.
Yeah, because obviously a kid's upset. Like, I get that. Like, hey, this is my decision. We can talk about this tomorrow once we've like calmed down and we can, go from there. But as of right now, no. And realize that if you go any further with this, it's just going to hurt you in the future of this being taken back.
Now, the tough thing about a game like that is it's through VR. So it's not like you can even monitor what your kid's doing in it, to my knowledge. I don't know if you could like put it on a screen also or something like that.
You can't.
But do people? Like, I've never seen us do that when she's just here doing it, Like,
I mean, randos, like normies? No.
What? That's 12-year-olds?
I live in a different world, sir.
Okay.
Do you think that my kid would have something like that and I wouldn't have it on screen as well so that we could both enjoy it at the same time?
No, yeah, I could see that. So, but the appeal of the VR is like
I wanted to
you can go anywhere and do it. So
yeah, no, I know. I wanted to build her a PC to be able to play a game that she showed interest in for 5 minutes.
That's funny.
I mean, come on.
That's cool.
I'm not your stereotypical person when it comes to video games.
Yeah, I know that's a tougher thing. But
no. So, on that subject though, I will go with a similar-ish type situation. So a couple of years ago, I want to say like, because the kid now is about to be 11 and is in 5th, which is the pinnacle of elementary.
Sure.
When she was in maybe 2nd grade, around there, maybe 3rd, somewhere around that, she wanted to play Fortnite.
Okay.
Fortnite is a first-person shooter. It's a third-person shooter. Battle Royale game. I'm not going to be a dick.
I've know of Fortnite. I have not played.
Do you know what all those words mean? Third-person shooter Battle Royale.
Yes.
Okay. I'm not trying to be a jerk, but I haven't played real games with you in over like 2 decades.
I know, and those terms existed then. So.
Battle Royale didn't.
Yeah, it did. Sure did.
The definition of Battle Royale has changed.
Okay.
So a Battle Royale game now is a map that will continuously shrink in size to a predestinated area over a period of time, where if you're outside of the bounds when it shrinks, it usually is either a poison or some sort of slow killing aspect of it. That's different. Battle Royale back in our day just meant everybody versus everybody.
Well, that's just a component of that Battle Royale style, but that's still what Battle Royale means. It's you're all going against each other. That's the theme of that gameplay.
Right, but
except
also
there's another component to it.
Typically, there's also 4v4 Battle Royale. It's squad based.
Okay.
And also, nowadays, if you say Battle Royale, every one of them has that. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, it literally is a different genre that's recently come up.
Okay.
But, she's a small kid. the question was brought up to like my attention of like, well, what do you think? And I was like, I don't give a shit. Like, tried to think back, and I'm like, technically, I wasn't playing those games at that age because they weren't around, and I wasn't allowed to play video games until I didn't have a console until like right before I met you.
Right.
You know? And that was a combination of just being poor and then also having somebody that was barely alive in this century that didn't understand technology and or like normalities.
I remember taking your power cords too.
Do you remember when I cut all the cords in the house?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
There was a battle royales going on.
I won. I was able to fix mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was a little bit of a different thing. I'm like, yeah, here's the thing. At that age, I don't think that she had the dedication and or dexterity to play for more than maybe like 10, 15 minutes anyway. So I was like, yeah, go ahead.
Right.
20 minutes later, I want you to play. And I'm like, I don't want to play this game. Let's play Minecraft again. All right, cool. But I think that is something that has to be an individual decision. I don't, like you were saying before, I don't think that it should be a government influence. I don't think it should be a manufacturer thing. I think it's individual.
Do you think Child Protective Services should get involved if a child shares at school that they play certain violent games?
Absolutely not.
And then like the teacher calls DCF or something like that?
No.
Does that happen?
I honestly don't know. It sounds ridiculously retarded enough that I feel like it must, because that's the way the world works. It's just stupid shit is what people focus on.
I'm not sure the content that they're exposed to is healthy, you know, and then like someone comes out and does an interview. So.
Yeah. A teacher that complained about something like that is a teacher that probably should be in a different line of work.
Yeah.
If you're focusing that much on that, I would love to see what your students' overall grade percentage is.
Right.
Because somebody's getting left behind if you're focusing that hard on something.
I mean, but kids can make claims or say certain things, and then that happens.
Oh, yeah.
There's knocks on the door, and there's an interview performed. Oddly enough, recently, this has happened to people that I know, and it is recent, and it's like, you know, kid threatened other kid with object, and then it's like, we want to see, or said that someone hit them, had a injury from a bike accident,
right,
and then said, oh, I got that because so and so did this, which was a lie,
right,
but it was like a thing to say to get attention. And then sure enough, there was someone at the door, interview, that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah, I had DCF come out when I was a kid because my mother was arguing with the neighbor. I don't remember what her name was, but her son's name was Kirk. They were like the most stereotypical Christian people ever.
Sure.
He had a baseball game for his computer, but it was a Bible baseball game where like when you were up to bat, you had to choose your difficulty of a single, double, triple, whatever, and then it would give you a Bible verse, and you would have to name what it was to be able to successfully hit the ball. That level. So anywho.
So video games do brainwash you. Interesting.
In certain regards. And so something happened, and she was basically, she came over to my house to basically rat me out to my mom about something.
Okay.
And so my mom slapped me. And so she called DCF on my mom for child abuse.
Oh.
So they came out and, we had a little conversation, the whole deal. So, yeah. No, I'm fully aware.
That's hysterical.
Yeah.
That is funny.
Yeah.
What'd you do to the kid?
I didn't do anything to him.
You shoot a bottle rocket at him, maybe?
No. I was, although I do remember, we can't get into that. I don't know if statute of limitations was actually.
I think you're good. You're old as shit. No.
So there was a bullyish type kid that locked me into my bathroom at one point, and that's where I learned that I was claustrophobic, and wouldn't let me out to the point where I broke down the door, like broke it into pieces and kicked and got out of it.
The Shining, sure.
Similar, but bare hands. And the whole time he thought it was funny. Obviously, my mom lost her shit, and so then like a week or so later, my mom was like, well, you know what you should do is you should invite him over and like take him to one of these rooms and then beat the living shit out of him.
Hysterical.
So I did. And then the cops were involved and all this other bullshit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a bully situation that this guy wasn't really a bully. He was, but.
One more thing.
Uh-oh.
I was in like 2nd grade. He was in like 7th.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. It's justified.
We were the same height.
Well, yeah, exactly. What do you mean? Level playing field.
I might have been in 3rd. I might have been in 3rd grade.
I didn't do anything that was too crazy like that, but there was a kid who, bigger kid, a little heavier, more annoying than he was like mean, but really just bothered people, like and like girls especially, like, you know, and so I brought these like toy handcuffs were made a lot better then.
Oh yeah, toy handcuffs back in the day,
they were like
to actually be like
metal handcuffs. They're like die-cast metal.
One step lower than real handcuff.
Right. I handcuffed him to the monkey bars and left him there.
I remember you telling me this.
Yeah.
And
then we all went inside.
Here's the thing,
and then
though.
They were asking where he was. And we look out the window and he's still handcuffed to the monkey bar.
How many hours?
Nobody ratted on me.
Would you say at that point in time you played video games?
It was like Mario and Duck Hunt and, you know, all that, because it was just, once again, that's...
Well, those are both violent. We already talked about that. Do you feel that...
I would say an hour or two, maybe like 3 hours a week, and that's on weekends.
I would say...
Because it was only my grandmother's house I had that.
I probably had spent like maybe 10, maybe 12 hours in my life at that point in time.
Right.
Outside of educational video games that I played at the university.
Right.
But those were actually non-violent.
Well, I was doing a public service actually, because then I had a little hustle going on with a couple of my friends.
Public service?
No, I was. Well, it wasn't a public service. It was paid. Because I had like this like protection service thing that we did.
So you were their pimp?
No, it wasn't just the girls. It was like, so there was a kid, Robert.
You were just ahead of your time.
His name was, I'll say his first, I was about to say his last name too. Robert was his first name. And he was nice kid, but like his dad was a cop actually, but he was like small, right. And tiny, like short. And he'd get beat up all the time. So he like hired me essentially to like be his bodyguard. So it was like a bodyguarding service in school back in like elementary. Yeah.
So hilarious.
It was. I did well.
Yeah, no, so I'm thinking about it and like, okay, so the first fight that I remember I got into, I think was when I was in 1st grade. It was right after we moved to Boise. It's the one with the frisbee with the hole in the middle. I don't remember what they're called.
Yeah.
The pink one with the purple stripes and thing. Where I put it around the kid and I was beating the shit out of him.
That's
the
nice.
6th grader.
Yeah.
I'd never played. I played Atari for maybe like 20 minutes before that.
I've been Atari.
And the only game I played was the Empire Strikes Back game where you were playing as the snowspeeder. And I didn't know what I was supposed to do, so I just flied straight.
That's funny.
So I don't think the video games made me violent. That's what I'm trying to get at.
No, it wasn't the video games that did that. I don't even think I watched violent movies. I don't know.
The only movies okay, this actually does sound bad then. The only movies I can remember that would have been considered violent was, of course, Rocky movies.
Sure.
But, I mean, I knocked him to the ground and beat the shit out of him on the ground. So, I mean, that's not boxing.
Right.
There was no proper form. Like, I don't feel like any of that was...
I don't think that video games can are the sole contributor to that, to violence and kids exhibiting violence at all, right? But does it have a contribution? Maybe. Because once again, they weren't, and you can argue this, but I think it's for two reasons. Reason number one, the accessibility to guns is there's a lot more of them, number one, and two, a lot more people have them. They're more widely available, I guess,
ever before.
But also the comfortability of guns, because there are in video games too. So it's like, oh, okay, that's a gun. I have to tell my daughter what a gun is versus like them learning and getting introduced to certain things through stuff like that, using them. Because how many kids know more about guns and weapons through video games than like, you remember Sly would like know all these things.
Oh,
and
I know a lot about
sniper rifles and these and all.
I know
this
a
stuff.
lot about guns now from when I played Call of Duty a couple years ago. We got really into it because I learned a lot about different stocks and barrel attachments and that.
Right,
and because it's a COD game, they actually are realistic things.
Right.
But I also say that if we go back like 4 or 5 generations, that was also very normal for all the kids on the farm to know all about the guns and shoot them and assist with
different, but because of technology, different guns, different
absolutely,
capacity.
Absolutely.
You're talking about rifles and shotguns versus,
still one shot is one shot.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying it's less dangerous.
No, more dangerous.
No, it's slower. Yeah, funny. It's slower.
Not the bullet that'll kill you; it's the infection.
Oh boy, lead poisoning. No, but I do think that there's something to it. It can contribute to those mental pathways, and if you're already having mental illness issues, is the whole point I'm trying to make.
I'll agree with that. Like I said, I don't think that video game violence is actually as bad as people make it out to be. I think that it was a very big target during a time frame when it was almost like a scapegoat.
It was.
Violent sounding music and media, just in general. That was the reason why these children were different than the previous generation. It's like, no, they weren't. Just like the same reason that generation that was complaining was completely different than their previous generation during Vietnam and all that type of stuff.
You go further back and you're teaching kids how to kill and use guns at much younger ages. Now you're teaching them to use video game controllers and thinking it's just as bad. Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, it's
like, are you kidding me right now?
It's an interesting topic because, like you said, there is a certain precedent where you can see certain statistics.
Sure.
But the problem is that we don't pay attention to those statistics until after the problem has already occurred.
Right.
Which is why the problem was able to recur. Because if we were paying more attention, we would have noticed that there was this little check mark and this little check mark and this little check mark. And then they started playing, Mario. I mean, it's like, you're not gonna play a round of Kirby and then run outside and grab a kitten and rip the head off.
Right.
That's just not. That's not how it's gonna work.
Right.
So overall, to wrap it all up, I would say, while video game violence has increased over time, by itself, I do not believe that it is detrimental to society. I do think there are certain people that are maybe not ready for it by the time the immature says they are.
Sure.
And I do also believe that there are certain people that probably shouldn't ever play certain types of games because they don't have the mental capabilities to be able to handle it.
Right.
But the games themselves are not causing the problems. There's a lot of other underlying issues that are causing these problems.
Yeah, I mean, if someone is mentally, I'm going to just say this word, it's going to sound bad, but someone's mentally weak.
Oh, yeah.
Then they're going to get exposed to something in their life anywhere down the line that's going to cause them whatever that stress is.
And I don't think it's bad to say mentally weak, because you're not saying that they're weak because like, oh, they're a bitch. You're saying weak because their body doesn't produce the chemical that they're able to be strong in that regard. It's not like they're choosing it. It's just the way it happens.
No, they just don't have that resilience, right? You know?
Exactly.
So,
but that was what we thought about video game violence. Let us know what your opinion is on it. I mean, I think it's a pretty interesting topic, but I do think that there's just too many other variables every time somebody tries to blame video games on something, where it's just like, it's just a scapegoat. Nah, you're good. Nice try.
When we get to that point where you put that full bodysuit on and you're fully immersed in this world and you're doing these things and just like,
you feel the pain, like
and all that.
I want
then
that so bad.
I know, but then I think that there might be an argument at that point where it's that hyper realism that it's a sim at that point. So you're now training to kill people and do those things like it's like a real life thing, you know. At that point, I think there might be, and so we still have time, but I don't agree that it ever was anything that should have a huge influence all the way up until you're actually doing it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's a whole other conversation. I'm not going to go into that one.
Yeah.
That was like paintball players. But anyway.
It's not a video game.
I know, but that is a sim.
It's a game.
Yeah. And most of those people are.
I know.
Anyway.
They think they know.
There's X-ballers and there's Woods ballers. There's a difference. Yeah. But anyway, put down in the comments which game you feel is the most violent one you've ever played, and if you thought that it was a positive or a negative experience overall.
Laser tag.
Wow. Anywho. But yeah, so make sure you check us out next week as well, when we will be talking about political parties. It'll be a nice, fun one that I'm sure will have no arguments whatsoever.
Nope.
At all. Anywho, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, all that kind of fun stuff. And other than that, we will see you next time. Over.